Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Z-Integrator in the 5-minute pool on ICC. I've played this player before, and they opened with d4. Let's play d5. Last time, I believe we had a Scandinavian, so they played e4 on move 1, but this time they're playing a different system. I'll just play knight c6 and keep it solid. So e3, yeah, flexible setup by white. I believe bishop g4 is the move here. Yeah, and then they go after this pawn. And now you go knight a5. I must confess, I don't know this line so well. So this will be interesting,
Check.
but I'll give it my best shot. So check, and I can play bishop d7. I believe that is the move. Hitting their queen, and they usually retreat to c2. And let's play rook c8, just lining up with their queen. Fast player. I think e6 is logical. Kind of shutting in my light square bishop with this decision, but on the whole, it looks fine. And I think I'll play knight c4, just so that knight e5 is less of a possibility for white. They could still play it, but maybe my knight being here will act as a deterrent to that. And now I want to get this bishop out so I can castle. So bishop e7 is logical. Bishop b4 also makes some sense. Maybe bishop b4, it's a little more active. Although what would I do in the case of a3? Let's go with bishop e7 instead. So I think I have a reasonably solid position. Castle now. I gotta watch this pawn. Yeah, like now this move is possible because if I were to take, they would take with the pawn, and if this knight moves, the pawn on h7 would be hanging. So I'm thinking b5, potentially. This way, I reinforce the knight, and I also maybe can advance b4 in the future. So queen e2, quick decision by white. I could play a6. I could maybe play h6 would be a decent move, just to create luft. So their queen is vacating the c file. That makes sense because I don't think they want the queen on the file opposing my rook in the long term. e6 seems like a good move. But I also want to get rid of this knight. But I can't rightly do that until I address the weakness of b5, I think. So, okay, rook c2. Now here, maybe something like knight e8 to d6. There's also pawn b4. But pawn b4, and if I didn't play that last move, it probably doesn't make sense to play it now. So what if I take on e5 at this point? Or maybe this knight e8 to d6 idea? I kind of trust that less. I don't know about that decision. Let's take on e5. We'll just see how they recapture. Bishop or pawn. White's moving very quickly. I'm already down 2 minutes on the clock. Looks to me like white is just playing a practical game. They're keeping the position symmetric. They're not really upsetting the balance too much, and they're playing off that clock. So they know they got an advantage in that department. Maybe f5 now? Yeah, let's play f5. I gotta watch c8, make sure that c8 doesn't come under attack like on a knight jump discovery. But my bishop is helping to defend it, and I don't see any offending knight moves that white could make. So now I'm giving white the choice of taking en passant, but then I could return my knight to f6, or maybe even take with the bishop. Probably I'll play knight takes f6. And I want to block this light square bishop. That's part of the motivation for my last move. By the way, I realize I'm going slightly out of order with these videos. I did a standard video last video, and it should have been a Blitz video. That was my mistake. I got the order mixed up. So I'm trying to correct that. Queen h5, kind of probing the king side a little bit. I could play g6. I could play knight c7. I could play b4 perhaps. Now, but b4 kind of sends the knight. I think they're going to play knight e2 now, is what white's trying for. Knight e2 to d4. Yeah, that must be what they're up to. So I don't want to play b4 and push them where they want to go anyways. Okay, let's just do this, and then I'm going to play knight a8 and probably knight b6. I fully realize that they're probably going to reposition their knight to d4, but I just don't really see what I do against that plan at the moment. So I'm going to play to simplify and try to relieve some of the tension. And now maybe queen b6 next move, or queen a5 even. Queen a5 could be good. that has the threat of queen e1 or queen takes a2. I don't know, though. I don't want to allow knight c6. I'll just keep it simple with this move. But rook e8 is not yet a threat. Or rook c8, rather, because they could trade and then play queen e8. Okay, so let's go g6. I probably have to attack that queen sooner or later. Okay, let's come over here and try to enforce a trade. So if they take here, I'd have to take with the e-pawn, which is a little unfortunate because it isolates the d-pawn. Maybe I can bring my knight to a blockading roll on e6. I gotta watch out for knight takes f5. It doesn't work right now because my queen is defended by my knight. My beautifully positioned knight in the corner on a8. What? That move doesn't work, does it? At least I don't think it should. Okay, so if I take with the bishop, that shouldn't work for him. I don't believe. Okay, let's take with the bishop first. They're going to play e6. Wow, maybe this does work. Knight c7? I gotta play knight c7. I think their idea is bishop e5. I wonder if they even saw that my queen was defended by the knight, or if they just assumed that there was a pin operating. Okay, this is going to get interesting down the stretch, because we both have, well, I have little time, and he has a position that isn't looking so great right now. So yeah, I just want to take this pawn next move. It's my sole plan. And I'm sure white's going to try to blitz me out. Man, this is tough. Okay, let's go here. If queen takes f5, I'm going to play queen e5 and look for a swap. If queen g4, I can play queen g5 and get the queens off the board. Probably queen h3 will be played. A bit of bet. Okay, so let's take that. As long as e7 doesn't kill me, I think I'm good.
Check.
Let's come here. Let's bring the queen back for protection. Check. All right, so white just let this one get away from them. That's for sure.
Time warning. Check.
But we'll see how that impacts the play.
Check.
And if they're going to play for a win. I might just take a draw, to be honest, but...
Check.
Let's bring up our king now. I'll try to win that e6 pawn. So far down on time, though.
Check.
A2 is under attack.
Check.
Well, let's see. See what I can make of this. I might be able to trade the queens.
Check.
I'm going to offer them a draw.
Check. Check.
Let's see if they... Ooh, actually, now they've blundered.
Check. Check.
I blundered myself back, though. All right, I'm just going to try to take that pawn on f4. That's my best chance to try to hold this. Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably wasn't going to win that anyways, but I'm happy with the draw, given how far down on time I was. I should have known he was going to try to sneak in a3, but I think with 1.7 seconds left, I probably was not going to mate him anyways, even with pre-moves. Okay, so it looks to me like white just miscalculated when they played bishop takes f5. Maybe they didn't realize that my queen was defended on b6, and they thought this was just winning material for them. Let's go back and have a look at that. It's tough. These games are ones that can trip me up when a player plays really fast in the opening, because with the commentary and everything, I know that I'm sacrificing speed. But it's worth it. It's worth it for me to do these videos for you guys. So previously I played queen b6 in the past in this position, which is fine. I know one recent work on the Slav actually queries queen b6. It says that it's perhaps not the best move, so that's why I played knight c6. And here, white could play knight f3, which would take the game into a standard position for an exchange Slav. But they played e3, because sometimes in this line, white wants to go bishop d3 and knight ge2, putting the knight on a different square. And one idea that they have with that is to play f3 and then e4 in the middle game. So bishop g4 is a decent way to try to cross this plan. But I must confess to only having some knowledge of this line. I don't have concrete knowledge of the move orders. So white gives this check on a4 and entices my bishop back to d7, and then plays queen c2. I think white got a minuscule edge, as is typical in the exchange Slav. White can't hope for a crushing advantage out of the opening in this line unless black does something truly egregious. But they can hope for a small and comfortable edge, which is one reason I'm actually thinking about playing this from the white side. I've never tried this from the white side before, but I think it would suit my style pretty well. So let's turn on the engine right about here. Yeah, as you can see, the engine's giving white a quarter pawn advantage or so. b5. The biggest advantage was the clock, though, because white was making all these moves lightning quick, and clearly they were comfortable with this position. Okay, so here I might have missed a shot. Knight takes b2. That is a tactic, so deflecting the rook away from guarding the knight on c3. And if rook takes, I take here. Yeah, that's a clean pawn for black. Can white do any sort of discovery? They can. Knight takes d5. So that's a desperado move. A desperado is when you know that you're going to lose a piece, so you try to get as much material for that piece as possible. And since white knows that the c3 knight would drop if they took on b2, they want to take on d5 and try to get a pawn for it back at least. So that's what knight takes d5 is about. So knight takes d5, knight takes, rook takes b2, and the engine thinks black is a bit better. Yeah, I guess I could take on f4 and get the two bishops if I wanted. It's a game. The game would go on. So instead I took on e5, which disrupted my coordination. I wasn't completely happy about the position I got. One factor I didn't weigh, which I probably should have, is the fact that they can take with the pawn, which frees up the d4 square for the knight. And white hit upon that idea in a couple more moves. And I should have known that, because that has happened to me a couple times from the black side. White will do this knight repositioning, but it just didn't click for me in this position that should they take with the pawn, not only is my knight being forced to the back rank, but that d4 square is prime territory for white to utilize with a knight outpost. Still, though, I think black's position remains solid. So here I played f5, blocking that light square bishop. Maybe they should take en passant and open up the diagonal. I was going to take with the knight. Computer still shows an advantage for white, but it doesn't look obvious to me that white is over half a pawn better. Bishop e5. White has better coordinated pieces, though, and rooks that are already doubled on the c-file. So instead, white played queen h5, and I was hesitating to play g6. I only did that when I had to, because I didn't want to create any further weaknesses on the king side. So here I played knight c7, which is pretty slow. And I even realized white was going to go knight e2 to d4, but I think at this point it's kind of too late to do something about it. So here the engine says white should just take on c8 immediately. Take, bishop takes, now knight d4. Yeah, because this carries with it the threat of knight c6. My bishop has been diverted. That looks a little stronger. Because here at least I get to initiate the trade on c2, and my bishop is still guarding this, and e6. It's passive, but at least I have the bishop monitoring those 2 points. Here I played queen b6. I thought about queen a5 as well, because this would hit the e1 square and also a2, but I really dislike the fact that I wasn't guarding c6. And it looks like I made the right call, because here the engine says g4 is strong for white. Yeah, and I definitely can't take that pawn because of this. And that solves the back rank issue too, so queen e1 is kind of a meaningless check now. White would gain a big attack. So I played queen here, and still g4 is good, which white played. Yeah, they played g4. And I played g6 to reinforce, and I want to throw up some roadblocks on this diagonal leading towards that h7 pawn, so hence g6. Rook c8.
Check.
So I've made some natural defensive moves, I would say, and already my position is critical from the looks of it. So here white would have been better served by leaving the rook on c2 and c8, respectively, and just taking immediately. So why is that the case? Let's try to think. So if I take with my e-pawn, what is the difference? Is it that they can play e6, something like that? So e takes f5. Oh, no, it must be because of knight takes f5, or bishop takes f5. E takes f5, let's say knight takes f5. No, I could take with my pawn in that case. Maybe bishop takes f5? Bishop takes, knight takes. Yeah, that could be it. So I think the line would be e takes f5, bishop takes f5. And then if bishop takes f5, there's knight takes f5, threatening mate on g7. And were I to take the knight on f5, I would run into rook takes c8 check. So the only line I would wonder about would be e takes f5, bishop takes f5, and then g takes f5. But I assume that's bad for me somehow. Maybe just because of e6. Attacking the bishop, and my pieces are all cut off from defending my king. White would be down a piece at that point. Let's check. So if here, I was thinking this, which the engine says is better. Yeah, and one of the ideas, the line I just mentioned, is this, threatening mate. And now there's no light square bishop defending the rook as well. So after this, it's rook takes
Check.
c8 and white wins. And if pawn takes, I was thinking e6 is very strong, which it is. White wins in this case. But even stronger, according to the engine, than take, and bishop takes f5 is just the immediate e6. So I can't play bishop e8. Bishop c6 is probably just going to run into something like that, or yeah, knight takes f5. Notice how my pieces are just so far removed from the king side that if white gets going with a couple pieces coordinating against my king, it's lights out immediately. Yeah, e6. And if take here, knight takes f5. Wow. And it's forced mate. Too many pieces in the vicinity of my king. That's all it boils down to. I can even save my rook now. King g2, but it doesn't matter. They're threatening mate. Let's just assume I take pieces. Bishop e5, threatening mate here. Bishop f8, let's say, and probably just queen g5. Yeah.
Checkmate.
So the preponderance of white forces near my monarch should have won the day for white, but I think they just got their move order wrong.
Check.
They took here, then took f5. I took with the e-pawn, and then took here, which looks like an ill-conceived idea. And even here, e6 is strong. Not quite as, well, not nearly as strong as the last line where white was doing this, but still this carries with it the threat of bishop e5. So how would that go? Take, bishop e5. Here I have bishop f8 without having to worry about queen g5 check, although that is still strong for white, apparently, because of the threat of queen f6. Yeah, and with my time, I would be very hard-pressed to defend here. Bishop c8, h4, the h-pawn can rush up and try to come to g6. Also, white can probably take this pawn whenever they want, because I'm pinned on the g-file. So black is up a pawn, but I'm under so much pressure, and look at all my pieces on the back rank, especially this knight, which needs at least a couple tempos to become relevant again. So e6 was good here, but yeah, they just got overeager, I think. Bishop takes f5. I took with the bishop. Take, e6. This was scary still. You see I'm -2.5, +2.5. But I have 45 seconds left, and I know that bishop e5 is the threat. So I think I have to activate this lame knight so that on bishop e5 I can take here and simultaneously stop the mate on g7. Yeah, and now after this, I felt like I should win, but with the time, any result is possible, and probably not a black victory.
Check. Check.
I think I messed up towards the end.
Check.
I won't look at these moves too closely because, yeah, I mean we were just both moving fast. After I won the e-pawn, I was able to force off the queens. White made the mildly risky decision of deciding to play on to win, but now queen h3 and white's in big trouble. Yeah, because if they go king e4, they're losing the queen to queen f5. So I didn't have much time left here, though. I was under 10 seconds.
Check.
So take here.
Check.
I get the queens off. Yeah, and
Check.
white coordinated their E and F pawns. I still did find a way to win by eventually giving up my bishop for the F pawn and then running the H pawn. But just didn't have time to pull this off. Yeah, and they played A3. And we got a draw. Otherwise, I was going to win because king is coming over and white is not in time to stop me from advancing my B pawn. Okay, so I made up for my time disadvantage at the end, but that was mainly thanks to white just executing this sacrifice too early. Or not too early, but in a wrong fashion. They could have played this E6 move a couple times, like right here, instead of bishop takes F5. E6 would have put me under a lot of pressure. And they also had an even stronger shot before the rooks were exchanged. Just G takes F5 here was winning according to the engine. So probably I have to play this a little bit more actively. I actually think the position was fine for me, but I wish I would have seen knight takes B2 on rook C2. If I had seen knight takes B2, it's an entirely different game. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.